The morning I left, Mark felt like stepping out of someone else's dream. The apartment we'd shared for almost 10 years was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator and the faint smell of last night's whiskey on the counter. My suitcase waited by the door like a witness. I didn't write a note, I didn't have to. He'd understand what the silence meant, even if he'd pretend not to. When I pulled onto I-5 that morning, the city skyline looked smaller than I remembered. I drove until the ache in my chest turned into something else. Relief, maybe. I ended up in Portland because it was far enough to start over and close enough that my sister, Emma, could still find me if I disappeared into myself. The studio at 214 Alder Street was the kind of place you rented when you needed a pause, not a future. Peeling paint, narrow windows, the faint scent of dust and coffee from the shop downstairs. Still, it was mine. I unpacked slowly, each box like a tiny exhale. My hands shook the first night I taped the lock. My laugh sounded too loud in the dark. I told myself I wasn't scared, but fear has a way of finding the cracks. I called Emma that night. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. Her voice was soft but carried that older sister edge that meant she was scared for me. "I'm fine," I lied. "Promise me you'll call if anything feels wrong." "I promise," I said. But promises are thin armor. By the end of the first week, the quiet had teeth. I worked freelance, logos, ads, book covers, but my laptop screen became a kind of mirror that showed more loneliness than light. On a Thursday night, wine in hand, I downloaded a dating app. I told myself it was curiosity, not desperation. That's how he appeared, Ryan. He was charming in a way that felt old-fashioned. He said he was an EMT, worked long hours, loved jazz, hated pineapple on pizza. He listened. God, he listened. The first night we talked for hours, his voice low and calm, like someone who could steady a storm. He said, "You're braver than you think." It was the kind of line that should have sounded rehearsed but didn't. I wanted to believe it. Maybe I needed to. When he sent flowers, white peonies, no card, I pretended not to notice the strange detail. How would he know they were my favorite? Ryan called every night after his shifts. I'd make tea and sit by the window, the city humming outside. He always asked, "Are you breathing?" A habit, he said, from work. Sometimes his voice messages came at odd hours, 2 or 3 a.m., but I told myself EMTs kept strange hours. That made sense. Everything he said made sense until it didn't. He started finishing my sentences in text threads. At first I thought it was chemistry. Then it was too exact. He'd mentioned the song playing from my neighbor's apartment before I'd even told him about it. He joked about my coffee order before I mentioned the cafe's name. Once, when I told him I'd be working from a thrift market downtown, he replied, "Booth 7 has better light." I froze. That wasn't on my profile. It wasn't anywhere online. When I asked him how he knew, he laughed. Lucky guess. I wanted to believe that. I really did. By September, the rain came heavy, turning the streets into mirrors. I'd come home late one night and found a grocery receipt on my doormat. The timestamp, 7:22 p.m., was the same moment I'd been on FaceTime with Ryan. The name on the receipt was mine. My heart kicked against my ribs. I called him immediately. "Did you order something for me?" "No," he said after a beat too long. "Maybe a neighbor?" "No one else has my name, Ryan." He chuckled. Easy, practiced. "You're overthinking again, Lena. Deep breath, you're safe." But I wasn't. I could feel it. Safety doesn't need to be repeated like a prayer. Emma noticed the difference in my voice when we spoke. "You sound tired," she said. "Just work." "Lena." "What?" "I know that tone. It's the same one you used to use with him. You sure you're okay?" "I'm fine." I wasn't fine. I was afraid of the dark again. It was Thursday, 11:07 p.m., the kind of Portland night when the rain feels endless. I was rinsing the kettle when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Not the heavy stomp of the guy from 3A, but slow, careful steps. Then a knock. Polite. 2 taps. My breath caught. I checked the peephole. Nothing but the faded green of the corridor wall. My phone buzzed. Ryan. The screen said incoming call. I answered, whispering, "Hey, someone's outside." The line rang 3 times, and then from the other side of the door, I heard the same ringtone echo. My ringtone. The sound came from a few feet away, muffled but unmistakable. I froze. "Ryan," I whispered. The ringing stopped. Silence. Then the faint scuff of sneakers retreating down the hall. I slid to the floor, shaking, my back against the door. I called Emma, voice barely there. "Lena, call 911, now. I think it's him." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." As I reached for my phone again, something tapped against the window. Once, twice, slow, deliberate. I killed the lights and crawled to the wall, every muscle locked. When the police arrived minutes later, I heard their radios crackle in the hall. They found the window latch broken, muddy footprints on the fire escape, but nothing else. The officers were kind, detached. "Could have been a prowler. Happens more than you'd think," one said. They offered to call someone to stay with me. I said no. After they left, I found it. A slip of paper on my blanket. In black ink, neat handwriting. "You were safest when you were with me." I sat there until sunrise, holding that note like it could explain everything wrong with my life. The next week, blurred. Police reports, locked windows. Emma calling twice a day. I changed my number, deleted the dating app, but the feeling didn't leave. Every creak, every shadow felt like him. The detective who took my case, a woman named Alvarez, asked if I had proof Ryan existed. "Any photos? Voice messages, social media?" "Just his number." She ran it through the database. "It's a prepaid line, no registration." It was like he'd never existed. I started sleeping with the light on. I stopped answering unknown numbers. Sometimes I thought I heard his voice in the stairwell, the way he used to say my name, soft, careful, like he owned it. My mind became its own haunted house. Emma came to stay one weekend. She brought groceries, wiped down the counters, and said, "You need to get out of this place. I can't just run again." "You're not running, you're surviving." That night, as she slept on the couch, I scrolled through old messages looking for something, anything that proved I wasn't imagining it. And then I found it. A photo from weeks earlier, one I hadn't noticed. It was a picture of me, standing at the cafe window, coffee in hand, head tilted down toward my phone. The caption, "You look peaceful when you don't know you're being watched." The timestamp matched a day he'd texted me from the ambulance. I forwarded it to Detective Alvarez. She didn't reply until morning. "We're tracing the metadata. Keep your doors locked. Don't go anywhere alone." By noon, she called. "The photo was uploaded through a local Wi-Fi network, the same building you live in. Someone here's been using multiple fake accounts." Ryan wasn't just watching. He was close. The following night, I heard the voice again, through the vent this time. Faint but real. "I told you you'd be safe." It wasn't loud, just a whisper that crawled down my spine. I turned the TV up, heart hammering. Emma was in the shower, humming, unaware. Then came the noise, a thump from the hallway, followed by the unmistakable creak of the fire escape. I grabbed my phone and ran to the bathroom. "Emma, get dressed, now." "What's happening?" "He's here." The sound moved closer, metal on metal, the scrape of a shoe on the balcony rail. We locked the door, dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, practiced. "Stay on the line. Officers are 2 minutes out." Those 2 minutes felt like forever. The window rattled once, twice. Then silence. When the police arrived, they caught him halfway down the fire escape, hood pulled low, gloves on, bag slung over his shoulder. It wasn't Ryan. It was a man from downstairs, apartment 1C. He worked nights, said little. His name was Paul, but in his bag were photos, screenshots, and a phone labeled Ryan. Dozens of women, dozens of names. He'd never been an EMT. He'd been pretending for years. When I gave my statement, Detective Alvarez said quietly. He used the dating apps to learn habits. Most of the women never knew his real name. Why me? I asked. She looked at me, tired. You were kind. Kindness makes people like him feel seen, and they twist that. It took months before I stopped hearing his voice in the dark, before I stopped checking the locks twice, then 3 times. Emma helped me move again. Different city, different window, same kettle. Sometimes I still flinch at the sound of a phone ringing. Sometimes I don't answer. I kept repeating the same sentence in my head while fixing my lipstick in the cafe mirror. You deserve a normal evening. It was April 2022, the kind of Seattle night that looked borrowed from someone else's movie. Cold rain sliding down the windows, soft jazz spilling from Cafe Amara's speakers. It had been a year since I'd left the small town where everyone knew about my messy breakup, the kind where people whisper in grocery store aisles and pretend not to stare. My therapist said moving would help. My mother said I'd just take my problems with me. They were both right. The breakup with Aaron had hollowed me out in ways that still surprised me. He'd made me doubt my own memories. Little things, like whether I'd said something cruel, whether he'd really raised his voice. The kind of slow, quiet manipulation that makes you rewrite yourself. Leaving him wasn't brave, it was survival. Now, a year later, I was trying to date again. Start small, my sister Grace had told me. Coffee, public place. If it's weird, fake an emergency. Cole had seemed harmless enough. Graphic novel artist, dry sense of humor, sent me drawings of cats wearing space helmets. He texted like someone from another decade. Complete sentences, no emojis, polite but confident. His bio said, looking for something real. Mine said, trying to believe that exists. When he messaged, I'll be the guy with the raincoat and a nervous smile. I smiled too. Inside Cafe Amara, the air smelled like orange peel and espresso. I sat near the window, watching strangers hurry past with umbrellas turned inside out. When Cole walked in, shaking water from his coat, I felt my pulse skip. Tall, clean-shaven, with the kind of quiet presence that felt practiced. You're exactly how I pictured, he said, hanging his coat. That's a dangerous thing to say, I teased. Maybe, he smiled. But you like danger, don't you, Lo? The nickname hit me like static. No one had called me Lo in 2 years. I laughed, but it came out wrong, thin and sharp. Old nickname? Cole asked like he'd read my mind. Something like that, I said. He ordered an almond milk mocha, 2 pumps of caramel before I even opened my mouth. My stomach tightened. That was my old favorite, something I hadn't mentioned in any of my profiles. Lucky guess, he said, stirring his drink. We talked about books, about the rain, about his latest project, something about monsters who wear human faces. He spoke softly with long pauses, like someone measuring every word. I tried to focus on the warmth of the cafe, the sound of dishes clinking, but every time he said my name, it felt like he was testing how it fit in his mouth. Halfway through, my phone buzzed. An email from an unknown address. Subject line, nice choice of cafe. Attached was a photo. It was me and Cole sitting exactly as we were now, taken from outside the window. My breath caught. My chest went hollow. Cole tilted his head. Everything okay? Yeah, I managed. Just work stuff. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Work can wait, Lo. I excused myself and walked outside, phone trembling in my hand. The rain felt colder now. I called Grace. You remember that guy I told you about? Cole? The artist? Yeah. He knows things he shouldn't. Then leave, right now. I turned back toward the cafe. Cole's seat was empty. His coat was gone. On the table, where his coffee had been, lay my old apartment keychain, the one I'd lost last year during the move. My hands shook so hard I dropped my phone. The little brass charm, a lighthouse, looked dull under the cafe lights. The police took the report politely. The officer, young and kind, wrote everything down without looking convinced. "You sure you didn't just misplace the keychain?" "I'm sure." He smiled like someone trying to calm a child. "Dating apps can be unpredictable. Maybe he looked you up online." "Maybe. But how would that explain the photo?" That night I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the apartment sounded like a door opening. I pushed a chair under the knob, double-checked the window locks, and sat on the floor until sunrise. Grace came the next day, coffee in hand. "You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't." She sat beside me. "Do you want to stay at Mom's for a while?" "No. That would feel like going backward." I showed her the photo. Her face drained of color. "This is from tonight?" "Yesterday." "Send it to the police again." Days passed. I tried to work, but the designs on my screen started to blur. A week later, I got a call from Detective Rowan. "We checked the cafe's security footage," she said. "The man you described leaves before your call to 911. Hood up, face hidden." "So, nothing. We're looking into it." That phrase, "looking into it," became background noise. At night, my phone would buzz with calls that disconnected after one ring. No caller ID. I told myself it was spam. Sometimes I almost believed it. Then one morning, I found a sketch slipped under my door, charcoal lines on thick paper. It was me sitting at Cafe Amara, drawn from outside the window. The detail was so exact I could see the steam rising from my cup. I started carrying pepper spray everywhere. I changed my number, deleted every dating app, and told work I was taking time off. Detective Rowan called again. "We traced the email address," she said. "It was created from a public Wi-Fi network near your building. Hard to track." "So he's close?" "Possibly. Keep your doors locked." Grace began staying over. Every night she'd double-check the locks while I watched from the couch. "He's not coming back," she'd say. But her eyes didn't match her voice. One night, I woke to the sound of paper sliding under my door. I froze. When I turned on the light, there was another drawing, this time of me sleeping. The angle was from inside the apartment. Grace called the police again. They searched the place, the hallway, even the fire escape. Nothing. The next morning, Detective Rowan came herself. "We found partial prints on the sketch," she said. "We're running them now." "Do you think it's Aaron?" I asked quietly. She paused. "That's one possibility." Hearing his name felt like reopening a wound. The way Cole had said low, the mocha order, the way he'd watched me, it all started to twist together. Could Aaron have found me through someone else's name? Could he have created Cole? That night I packed a bag, ready to leave town again. Grace begged me to stay until we had answers. "You can't run forever," she said. "I can try." But before I left, a package arrived, no return address. Inside was a sketchbook. Every page showed me from different angles at Cafe Amara, drawn with obsessive care. On the last page, in neat handwriting, I only wanted to finish the picture we started. The police traced the fingerprints from the sketchbook. They belonged to Aaron. He'd been living in Portland under another name, teaching art classes at a community center. When they brought him in, I went to the station, not to see him, but to see the evidence box. My keychain, the sketches, the fake profile printouts. He'd built an entire persona to find me again. Detective Rowan said quietly, "He told us he just wanted to talk, that you'd understand." Grace squeezed my hand. "You don't have to see him." "I know." Still, for weeks after, I kept expecting him to reappear in crowds. Trauma teaches you that ghosts don't need bodies. They live in sounds. The scrape of a chair, the buzz of a phone, the word low whispered by mistake. Months later, I moved again. New apartment, different city. I painted the windows white. I learned how to sleep without checking the door 3 times. But sometimes when I pass an art store window, I see sketchbooks open to charcoal portraits. faces that almost look like mine. And I wonder if he ever really wanted to draw me, or if he just wanted to own the picture. Because that's what control looks like. It smiles, it sketches, it calls you low like it's doing you a favor. And I remind myself, no picture is worth staying still for. Love without respect is just possession wearing a softer face. Real safety isn't found in being watched, protected, or remembered. It's in being free to disappear when you need to. No one who truly loves you will ever need to prove it by following your shadow. The air in Brooklyn smelled of wet asphalt, warm pastries, and a faint hint of jasmine drifting across the street. I leaned against the brick facade of the Green Ivy Cafe, rubbing the back of my neck as I checked my watch for the fourth time in 10 minutes. 6:30 p.m. She said 6:30. I wasn't used to waiting. Navy life had conditioned me to punctuality, to schedules, to knowing exactly what was coming next. College didn't. Textbooks were unpredictable, professors were unpredictable, and dating apps? God, those were exercises in controlled chaos I didn't fully understand. My life, after years in the Navy, had been structured. Wake up, PT, drills, orders. Now, it was soft edges and uncertainty. Social anxiety gnawed at the corners of every interaction. And there was another thing. Tess, my ex, who had disappeared without explanation months ago, leaving me with nothing but a messy trail of unanswered questions. Closure had never been part of my vocabulary, and I'd learned to live with the ache of ambiguity. But part of me was still hunting answers in the quiet corners of my mind. A soft bell jingled behind me. She was here. Tess. Confident, purposeful, yellow coat catching the lamplight, smile warm but eyes sharp, calculating. She moved past the cafe door with the kind of assurance that immediately made me aware of how nervous I was. "Jason," she said, voice calm, low, yet carrying a subtle edge. "Yeah. Hi," I said, stepping forward, hand extended, voice tighter than I wanted. Inside, the cafe smelled of coffee, sugar, and warm ovens. She ordered quickly, her eyes briefly scanning the room like she already knew it, while I nervously traced my fingertips along the edge of the table. "How long were you with your ex?" she asked casually, voice like a melody that somehow made my stomach twist. It's complicated," I said cautiously, forcing a smile. She tilted her head, leaning closer. "You know, some people never really explain things. I just like hearing the truth." And just like that, the first layer of comfort was gone. A soft breeze brushed the cafe window behind me, but it felt like a warning more than air. We talked about mundane things first, the city, college, coffee blends, but soon the conversation pivoted. She asked about my ex again, probing gently yet insistently. "You didn't answer why she left," she said. I said, "It's complicated." I laughed nervously. "I like knowing the whole story," Tess replied, calm, unflinching. And just like that, my defenses tightened. I felt my pulse pick up, my palms dampen. After dinner, Tess suggested a walk along the river. The lamps reflected off the water, casting a golden sheen that was both beautiful and deceptive. She asked more questions, subtle, layered ones, weaving them into casual conversation. "Do you still think about her? Did you ever hope she'd come back? What do you feel you didn't tell anyone?" Every question landed, quiet but precise, like a scalpel. I laughed to deflect, answered vaguely, but a low hum of anxiety persisted, humming in my chest. Somewhere between the third question and the sound of the water against the pier, I realized something. She didn't just want a story. She wanted my story. Every piece, every missing detail, the unanswered questions I had tucked away. "You know," she said softly, "I can tell when someone's holding back. It makes it harder to know them." I wanted to ask why this mattered to her, but instinct told me not to. There was a calmness in her that didn't belong in casual dating. She wasn't nervous or hesitant. She was in control. By the time we circled back toward the city lights, my unease was a knot in my stomach. I laughed, tried to shake it off. You really like asking questions, don't you? I like the truth, she said. The city noise was soft behind us, but the river seemed loud in my head. Something was off. Something I couldn't yet name. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A new email appeared in my inbox. At first, I didn't recognize what it was. Snapshots of me from the past months. Some were public. Instagram posts, college events, but others were clearly private. Coffee shop trips I'd thought unnoticed. Late night walks I hadn't shared with anyone. And each photo had a note beneath it. You never told me what happened to her. My chest tightened. Sweat prickled at my temples. Someone had been watching me, tracking me. The loose threads of my life, the parts I thought forgotten or invisible, were suddenly illuminated. I stared at the photos again. Familiar streets, familiar cafes. Every detail matched. Someone had constructed a narrative from my life without my permission. I called my sister Karen, desperate. Her voice was calm, grounding. I don't know. They know about her, I said, words stumbling out. Are you sure it's real, or just paranoia? I wish it was paranoia, but every detail matches. Then be careful. Don't confront it alone. She was right. I felt like a man in unfamiliar armor, suddenly aware that every space I moved through had become a stage. My home, the streets, even my phone. They were no longer private. I spent the day moving methodically, checking locks, changing passwords, planning contingencies. Every sound outside my apartment made me jump. Days later, there was a knock on my door. Police, anonymous tip. Evidence suggesting I might be linked to the disappearance of my ex. Confused, panicked, heart hammering. Everything pointed to Tess, her questions, her presence, her smile, the quiet precision with which she had gathered information. I tried to confront her. Gone. Vanished. My phone buzzed. A single text. Your sister says hi. I stared at the smashed phone on the table. Tess's coffee cup gone. The realization hit like a punch. The first date had been a trap. Every conversation, every question, carefully designed to uncover the truths I thought I'd buried. My memory, my trust, my sense of safety, none of it belonged to me anymore. Weeks later, I moved apartments, changed numbers, avoided dating apps. But every cafe window reminded me of her, the questions, the watchful gaze. First dates, I learned, could reveal more about ourselves than anyone else, and sometimes uncover truths we weren't ready to face. Not every curiosity is harmless. Some people observe, manipulate, and exploit your trust without warning. Instinct, caution, and boundaries aren't paranoia. They are your shield. Protect your story until you choose who can read it. The neon glow of the Ember Bar reflected off the puddles lining the streets of Denver that March evening, 2025. I zipped my leather jacket a little tighter and took a deep breath, the icy air filling my lungs with a sharp sting that somehow made me feel alive. I'd been navigating the dating world for almost a year after my divorce, and every date felt like stepping onto a minefield I wasn't sure I was ready for. Tonight, I was meeting Mark, a firefighter I had matched with on Tinder, someone who seemed grounded and for once trustworthy. After my marriage ended, life felt like a heap of rubble. My ex had left chaos in his wake, financial lies, half-truths, and the lingering sense that I couldn't trust anyone again. I had to rebuild everything. My apartment, my routine, my sense of self. My mother called weekly, her voice carrying that mix of love and fear she always had when she worried about me. Kayla, please promise me you'll be careful. Don't let anyone make you doubt yourself again. I'm careful, Mom. I know what I'm doing, I replied, though even I wasn't entirely sure. Mark had been charming through texts, small jokes about firehouse life, check-ins on how my day went, and little gestures that didn't feel overbearing. I allowed myself to hope quietly, like someone peeking through a door crack, afraid to be fully seen. The bar was warm when I stepped inside, a cocoon of amber light, the soft strum of an acoustic guitar blending with quiet chatter. Mark waved from a corner booth, a calm, confident smile on his face. He looked like the sort of person who could steady anyone's nerves. "Kayla?" he asked, rising slightly. "Mark, hi," I said, my heart skipping a beat. The conversation started easy. We spoke about movies, childhood trips, the absurdity of dating apps. His laugh was soft, genuine. I noticed, though, that his eyes flicked toward my phone a few times, his hand brushing the menu just a little too casually. I shrugged it off as nerves, or maybe paranoia. By the end of the night, I walked home with a strange sense of comfort and unease mingled together. I told myself, it's okay to trust someone cautiously. Just don't let yourself fall too fast. Over the next few weeks, Mark and I fell into a rhythm. Dates at quiet coffee shops, weekend walks through the city, late-night texts. He remembered tiny details about me, the flavor of coffee I preferred, the way I twisted my hair when I was thinking, even little stories about my childhood I hadn't told anyone else. At first, it felt sweet. My instincts, sharpened by past betrayals, told me to be careful, but I wanted to believe in the good. Then, the late-night calls started to feel less like interest and more like intrusion. Messages pinged endlessly. "Did you get home safely? Are you eating? What are you wearing right now?" At first, I laughed nervously, thinking it was just concern. But the warmth started to feel heavy. One night, mid-conversation, a woman's name flashed across his phone. I froze. Curiosity flared into anxiety. Later, I quietly searched online and found 3 identical Tinder profiles in different cities, all using the same photo and bio. My stomach dropped. I called my brother Ryan, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Ryan, it's all fake. He's been doing this to other women. Look at these profiles." "Kayla, slow down. Are you sure? Could it be coincidence?" "No, he's orchestrated everything, the calls, the schedules, the excuses, he's manipulating people." Ryan sighed. "Then you've got to confront it safely. Document everything. Don't go alone." My world shifted in that instant. The warmth, the smiles, the gestures, all carefully constructed lies. I realized I had been navigating someone else's script, not my own life. The next day, I felt my stomach twist the moment I opened my social media. My own photos appeared on fake accounts labeled with lies linking to my workplace. Messages arrived from strangers, some flirtatious, some cruel, some threatening. My sense of safety, something I had fought so hard to rebuild, shattered in pieces. I went to the police presenting the evidence. They discovered that Mark had been blackmailing multiple women, recording dates, and selling their photos online. The warmth I had felt on our first date, the laughter, the shared stories, the comfort, had been an illusion, meticulously constructed to manipulate me. That night, alone in my apartment, I curled into my comforter, shaking. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered to the empty room, "Why did I let myself trust him?" I called my mother. "Mom, I'll be fine," I said, voice cracking. The truth was, I wasn't. Not yet. Weeks passed. I changed my numbers, deleted all online profiles, and tightened my routines. Slowly, I rebuilt my sense of safety. I started journaling every night, turning anxiety into clarity. Each entry reminded me of boundaries, self-respect, and vigilance. I reconnected with friends I had drifted away from during my marriage. I began attending self-defense classes, small steps toward reclaiming my physical and emotional security. Each step reminded me that safety wasn't about avoiding the world. It was about understanding it, preparing for it, and trusting instincts over charm. Even now, months later, I sometimes glanced at strangers a little longer, listened a little closer, aware that danger could come hidden behind a smile. I reminded myself, knowledge, awareness, and boundaries are power. Months later, A package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside were several envelopes, each labeled with a city name I had never visited. Each contained a photograph of a woman smiling at a cafe. Beneath one, a note in handwriting I recognized immediately. "You're not the only one who survived. But remember, they're still out there." My chest tightened. My first instinct was fear. But I caught it, breathed through it, and felt a strange clarity. I had survived. I had learned. I had grown. I sat on my bed, envelope in hand, heart racing, but not with panic. I realized I had a choice: let fear define me, or let vigilance guide me. This time I chose resolve. My life, my safety, and my trust were mine to protect. I whispered to myself quietly, fiercely, "I am careful. I am vigilant. I am alive." Life will sometimes place people in your path who manipulate, deceive, or violate your trust. The ultimate power comes from trusting your instincts, establishing firm boundaries, and reclaiming control over your personal safety and emotional well-being. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's learning to act despite it, stronger and wiser than before. Boston's streets were quiet at 2:17 a.m., February 2025. The city had that familiar hush after snowmelt and rain mixed, puddles reflecting neon signs and streetlights in jagged fragments. I pulled my coat tighter around my shoulders as I stepped out of St. Jude's Hospital, the exhaustion from my 12-hour shift pressing down on me. The chill wasn't just in the air. It was in the way the city seemed to watch, like the streets themselves were alive, keeping notes on everyone who dared move through them in the dead of night. Being a nurse had conditioned me to focus on others, to put myself last. My long-term relationship ended last year, after years of trust broken in ways subtle and sharp. Betrayal had a quiet, lingering echo, and I'd spent months learning to differentiate between my intuition and paranoia. My roommate Claire often reminded me, "Megs, people aren't all bad, but please don't let charm blind you." I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. I had recently joined a dating app to meet someone who worked late hours, someone who might understand my nocturnal rhythm. That's when I matched with Chris. He claimed to be a night security guard. Our conversations were easy, light, and oddly comforting. He joked about the weirdness of our opposite schedules. We shared playlists of quiet, late-night music, and we discussed the city in ways only night owls could appreciate. After a week of texting, we agreed to meet at a 24-hour cafe near my apartment. I arrived first, the smell of roasted coffee and cinnamon enveloping me. Neon lights reflected in puddles outside, steam rising from my cup as I cradled it with numb fingers. Then Chris arrived, small smile, casual and calm, like someone who belonged in this quiet cityscape. "Megan?" he asked, voice low but warm. "Chris." "Hi," I said, a flutter in my chest that I hadn't felt in months. We talked softly about work, music, and deferred dreams. I realized how rare it was to find someone awake when I was, someone whose life mirrored mine in strange ways. The conversation flowed easily, but there was an unsettling undercurrent I didn't notice yet. He knew things about my nightly routines I hadn't shared. "I love that you pause at the corner outside the 7-Eleven on 3rd. Always at the same time," he said casually. My stomach nodded. I do?" I asked cautiously. "I just noticed things," he replied, smiling, benign on the surface. It was almost charming. Almost. I told myself to trust my instincts, but also to let myself feel warmth. Cautious warmth, nothing more. The first few weeks felt effortless. Chris and I met for coffee, walks along quiet streets, and occasional brief texts during shifts. I told myself it was normal for someone to pay attention, but slowly the attention became detailed, almost too precise. He knew my commute, the songs I hummed while walking home, even habits I considered private. One evening, I noticed a text. "You left the hospital at 2:05. Didn't even pause at the crosswalk. Hope you're warm." My pulse spiked. I hadn't shared my exact schedule, not even with Claire. I called her immediately. Lauren, it's him. He knows where I live. He knows my habits. Meg, slow down, are you safe? I don't know. Every time I look out the window, I half expect to see him. Her voice softened. Then we plan. We don't panic. You're not alone in this. I tried to dismiss it, telling myself I was overreacting. The late-night texts continued, each one hinting at knowledge only someone watching could have. He commented on songs I hummed in the apartment, the rhythm of my steps leaving the hospital, even the way I brewed tea. It wasn't just creepy. It was intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. I started scanning reflections in windows, checking shadows in hallways, and timing the seconds it took for strangers to pass my building. My sense of home was no longer safe. The city felt too close, watching, observing. The night after I refused a date, an audio message arrived on my phone. Heavy breathing, footsteps echoing softly, a faint hum, the same song Chris had sent me earlier in the week. My chest tightened. I called Claire, my voice shaky. Can you come? Please. I don't want to be alone. She met me at the building entrance, insisting on walking me inside. My apartment felt exposed in a way it never had before. As we turned the corner from the garage, a figure appeared, out of reach, pausing like a shadow frozen in motion. And then it started humming the melody from the message. My pulse hammered, and I froze, unsure whether to confront or flee. We alerted the police, provided all messages and accounts, and waited. Days later, the investigation revealed something shocking. The person behind the account was not Chris. The real Chris had no knowledge of the dating app, no connection to the messages. The man harassing me had created a fake profile using a coworker's ID. The perpetrator? Someone I had seen before. A delivery driver I had rejected months earlier. He had memorized my nightly routines, observing my routes and habits, fabricating intimacy with a precise, frightening understanding of my life. The knowledge that someone could manipulate reality so meticulously left me reeling. I moved apartments within the city, changed routines, and deleted every dating and social media account. The fear lingered, though. A quiet awareness that trust could be manufactured, that charm could disguise obsession. But I refused to let it dictate my life. I began journaling nightly, documenting patterns, fears, and insights. Meditation helped me reclaim control over my mind. During daylight, I took long walks, feeling the sun on my skin, letting the city feel familiar again. I started noticing the rhythms of life, reclaiming the night with deliberate awareness instead of fear. I called Lauren one afternoon. Are you finally feeling safe? Somewhat, I said. But I've learned, first dates aren't just about the other person. They're about recognizing how well you know yourself, and how fiercely you must protect what's yours. I reconnected with colleagues and friends, sharing cautiously, building a support system stronger than before. I realized safety wasn't just physical, it was emotional, mental, and digital. I had survived deception, manipulation, and obsession. The air in Brooklyn smelled of wet asphalt, warm pastries, and a faint hint of jasmine drifting across the street. I leaned against the brick facade of the Green Ivy Cafe, rubbing the back of my neck as I checked my watch for the fourth time in 10 minutes. 6:30 p.m. She said 6:30. I wasn't used to waiting. Navy life had conditioned me to punctuality, to schedules, to knowing exactly what was coming next. College didn't. Textbooks were unpredictable, professors were unpredictable, and dating apps? God, those were exercises in controlled chaos I didn't fully understand. My life, after years in the Navy, had been structured. Wake up, PT, drills, orders. Now, it was soft edges and uncertainty. Social anxiety gnawed at the corners of every interaction. And there was another thing. Tess, my ex, who had disappeared without explanation months ago, leaving me with nothing but a messy trail of unanswered questions. Closure had never been part of my vocabulary, and I'd learned to live with the ache of ambiguity. But part of me was still hunting answers in the quiet corners of my mind. A soft bell jingled behind me. She was here. Tess. Confident, purposeful, yellow coat catching the lamplight, smile warm but eyes sharp, calculating. She moved past the cafe door with the kind of assurance that immediately made me aware of how nervous I was. "Jason," she said, voice calm, low, yet carrying a subtle edge. "Yeah. Hi," I said, stepping forward, hand extended, voice tighter than I wanted. Inside, the cafe smelled of coffee, sugar, and warm ovens. She ordered quickly, her eyes briefly scanning the room like she already knew it, while I nervously traced my fingertips along the edge of the table. "How long were you with your ex?" she asked casually, voice like a melody that somehow made my stomach twist. It's complicated," I said cautiously, forcing a smile. She tilted her head, leaning closer. "You know, some people never really explain things. I just like hearing the truth." And just like that, the first layer of comfort was gone. A soft breeze brushed the cafe window behind me, but it felt like a warning more than air. We talked about mundane things first, the city, college, coffee blends, but soon the conversation pivoted. She asked about my ex again, probing gently yet insistently. "You didn't answer why she left," she said. I said, "It's complicated." I laughed nervously. "I like knowing the whole story," Tess replied, calm, unflinching. And just like that, my defenses tightened. I felt my pulse pick up, my palms dampen. After dinner, Tess suggested a walk along the river. The lamps reflected off the water, casting a golden sheen that was both beautiful and deceptive. She asked more questions, subtle, layered ones, weaving them into casual conversation. "Do you still think about her? Did you ever hope she'd come back? What do you feel you didn't tell anyone?" Every question landed, quiet but precise, like a scalpel. I laughed to deflect, answered vaguely, but a low hum of anxiety persisted, humming in my chest. Somewhere between the third question and the sound of the water against the pier, I realized something. She didn't just want a story. She wanted my story. Every piece, every missing detail, the unanswered questions I had tucked away. "You know," she said softly, "I can tell when someone's holding back. It makes it harder to know them." I wanted to ask why this mattered to her, but instinct told me not to. There was a calmness in her that didn't belong in casual dating. She wasn't nervous or hesitant. She was in control. By the time we circled back toward the city lights, my unease was a knot in my stomach. I laughed, tried to shake it off. "You really like asking questions, don't you?" "I like the truth," she said. The city noise was soft behind us, but the river seemed loud in my head. Something was off. Something I couldn't yet name. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A new email appeared in my inbox. At first, I didn't recognize what it was. Snapshots of me from the past months. Some were public. Instagram posts, college events, but others were clearly private. Coffee shop trips I'd thought unnoticed. Late night walks I hadn't shared with anyone. And each photo had a note beneath it. "You never told me what happened to her." My chest tightened. Sweat prickled at my temples. Someone had been watching me, tracking me. The loose threads of my life, the parts I thought forgotten or invisible, were suddenly illuminated. I stared at the photos again. Familiar streets, familiar cafes. Every detail matched. Someone had constructed a narrative from my life without my permission. I called my sister Karen, desperate. Her voice was calm, grounding. I don't know. They know about her, I said, words stumbling out. "Are you sure it's real, or just paranoia?" I wish it was paranoia, but every detail matches. "Then be careful. Don't confront it alone." She was right. I felt like a man in unfamiliar armor, suddenly aware that every space I moved through had become a stage. My home, The streets, even my phone, they were no longer private. I spent the day moving methodically, checking locks, changing passwords, planning contingencies. Every sound outside my apartment made me jump. Days later, there was a knock on my door. Police, anonymous tip. Evidence suggesting I might be linked to the disappearance of my ex. Confused, panicked, heart hammering. Everything pointed to Tess. Her questions, her presence, her smile, the quiet precision with which she had gathered information. I tried to confront her. Gone. Vanished. My phone buzzed. A single text. "Your sister says hi." I stared at the smashed phone on the table. Tess's coffee cup gone. The realization hit like a punch. The first date had been a trap. Every conversation, every question, carefully designed to uncover the truths I thought I'd buried. My memory, my trust, my sense of safety, none of it belonged to me anymore. Weeks later, I moved apartments, changed numbers, avoided dating apps. But every cafe window reminded me of her, the questions, the watchful gaze. First dates, I learned, could reveal more about ourselves than anyone else, and sometimes uncover truths we weren't ready to face. Not every curiosity is harmless. Some people observe, manipulate, and exploit your trust without warning. Instinct, caution, and boundaries aren't paranoia. They are your shield. Protect your story until you choose who can read it. I never thought moving to Portsmouth would feel like stepping into a different life. One week I was packing the remnants of my old bedroom, the tiny room I shared with Nick, whose temper was measured in texts and silent stares. The next week I was hauling boxes up to my dorm in a city that smelled like sea salt and old brick. College was supposed to be fresh beginnings, a chance to rebuild, but my history with Nick clung to me like a shadow. He had been controlling, the kind of boyfriend who measured love in instructions rather than affection. "Don't wear that tonight," he would say. "Who are you texting?" His obsession left bruises that didn't show on my skin but curled around my ribs and tightened in my chest. Even after I left, every sudden sound made me jump. Every late-night text triggered a loop of fear. My roommate, Jess, knew enough to check in but not enough to fix it. "I just want to feel normal for a night," I told her once, hugging my knees. Tonight was supposed to be that night, a chance to feel normal. I wrapped my scarf tighter around my neck, caught my reflection in the pub window, and wondered if I would even recognize the version of me that could trust someone again. The fox fiddle smelled like cinnamon, roasted coffee beans, and wood polish. It was cozy, warm, a stark contrast to the chilly October air outside. Then I saw him. Liam. Tall, confident, coat neatly buttoned, and a smile that didn't feel forced. "Emily?" His voice was calm, steady. "Hi, Liam," I said, forcing a smile. My chest fluttered, not with fear, I hoped, but with a cautious excitement I hadn't felt in months. We talked over pumpkin lattes, comparing music tastes, laughing at inside jokes about professors and late-night study sessions. For the first time in what felt like forever, I relaxed. His attention was careful, his questions thoughtful. I believed he was genuine, or at least I wanted to believe it. After dinner, the sweetness of the evening began to feel heavier. His messages arrived more frequently. At first, they were cute. "Did you survive your lecture? I thought of you when I heard this song." I told myself it was normal, that someone interested would notice details about your life. Then he started asking things I hadn't mentioned. "When are you usually leaving your classes? Do you like walking to the library alone?" I laughed nervously at first, thinking I was being paranoid. Jess rolled her eyes when I told her, but she listened. The real warning came when I saw him outside my dorm one morning. I froze halfway up the steps. He was just standing there, hands in pockets, pretending to read a sign. My stomach dropped. I wanted to turn and run, but I forced myself to keep walking, head down, pretending I hadn't seen him. That night I called Tom, my older brother, voice shaking. He keeps texting me, and today, I think he was outside my lecture hall. Emily, listen. You tell him to stop, and if he doesn't, the police, Tom said firmly. I did, but it keeps escalating. I'm scared, Tom. Then we do this together. Don't handle it alone. Hearing his calm but protective voice was like a lifeline. I realized I couldn't navigate this alone. Not this time. The next day, we went to the campus police. They listened with polite patience, taking my statement and asking details about his messages when I saw him and the content of his texts. It was exhausting to relive, but necessary. You're doing the right thing, one officer told me. This isn't harassment that goes away on its own. Tracking him, documenting everything, that's how we keep you safe. I left feeling a mix of relief and lingering anxiety. Liam didn't show up for weeks. I kept my phone on silent at night, avoided walks alone after dark, and changed my routines. My dorm keys jingled like a security chant in my pocket. Every knock on my door made my heart skip. I didn't fully trust the calm, but I was learning to respect my instincts. Even Jess noticed the change. You're still cautious, she said, handing me a mug of tea one evening. Good, but don't let it steal your life. A year later, I was at another pub, trying to meet new people without expecting too much. A woman named Claire sat next to me, nursing a cider, her story pouring out over our conversation like a mirror. She'd encountered a man named Liam, who manipulated her with the same obsessive texts, the same subtle intrusions into her life. I sat back listening, my stomach tightening. It was almost identical to what happened to me, I said quietly. She nodded, eyes sharp. He targets people like us, trusts the system just enough to lure you in. That afternoon, we shared experiences and tips, verifying identities online, never letting someone know your exact routine, reporting threats immediately. We became friends, a small shield against someone like him. For the first time, I felt less alone. This wasn't just about surviving, it was about understanding patterns and taking control. Even now, months later, I'm careful. Phone notifications still make me jump sometimes, but I've learned the difference between caution and paranoia. I walk different routes, change routines, and don't hesitate to block or report suspicious activity. I've rebuilt a version of myself that feels solid, cautious but not trapped. Sometimes when the wind rattles my dorm windows and a message buzzes late at night, I feel the old flutter of dread. But I whisper to myself, I survived once. I can survive again. And I believe it. I've learned that danger can hide in charm, that boundaries are not optional, and that trust must be earned. The experience taught me vigilance, self-respect, and the importance of speaking up. The story reminds us that healing after trauma requires both courage and awareness. Trust should be earned, boundaries respected, and instincts valued. Survival is not just avoiding danger, it's learning from it, reclaiming your life, and choosing safety without surrendering to fear. The sky over Brighton looked powdered with salt that evening, thin mist blurring the lamplight, the kind of soft rain that clung to your coat instead of falling. I was standing outside the Lantern Cafe, phone in hand, whispering to myself like a child repeating a spell. First dates are just small interviews for hope. It was early March, the kind of cold that slipped under your collar no matter how tightly you wrapped your scarf. My reflection in the cafe window looked tired but composed, hair brushed, lipstick steady, pretending I was someone who didn't overthink every silence. I was 43, divorced, trying to start again. The end of my marriage had been quiet, like watching wallpaper peel. There was no screaming, no betrayal you could point at, just two people who forgot how to be kind. My ex-husband, Daniel, lived in Bristol now with his new partner. Our daughter, Molly, 16 and opinionated, had chosen to stay with him, saying she needed a bigger city and fewer memories. I told her I understood, but it left a silence so deep I could hear my own thoughts echo. My apartment was small, near the sea, with squeaky floors and a view of the rooftops. I filled it with noise to stop myself from listening to what was missing. The kettle, the radio, the old typewriter keys tapping as I tried to write again. David came into my life through a book lovers forum I joined on a whim. His messages were gentle, intelligent, and a little formal. He'd write things like, "There's a comfort in sentences that remember how to breathe." He said he was a widower, worked in education, and loved secondhand bookshops. When he sent me a photo of a stack of old paperbacks with the caption, "My favorite scent," I laughed out loud for the first time in weeks. Now, standing outside the Lantern Cafe at 7:35 p.m., I wondered if that laughter had been a mistake. He arrived 5 minutes late, stepping through the door with a shy, apologetic smile and rain clinging to his sleeves. He was tall, with brown hair touched by gray and the kind of face that seemed trustworthy because it looked tired too. "For you?" he said, sliding a dog-eared copy of The Secret Garden across the table. "You mentioned it was your mother's favorite." I blinked. I had said that, but only once, in a brief voice note weeks ago when the rain was so loud I wasn't sure he'd even heard me. "You remembered," I said. "I remember everything," he replied lightly. That should have been charming. It wasn't. The Lantern Cafe was small enough that conversations blurred together, silver spoons on ceramic, laughter bouncing off the wooden walls. Bossa Nova hummed under it all. David stirred his coffee without looking down, as if he already knew where the spoon would land. We talked about books at first. He loved Dickens. I preferred Woolf. He said, "Virginia Woolf scares me." I laughed and said, "She should." Then, slowly, he began to weave in details about me. Too many details. When I mentioned my street's cherry trees, he nodded and said, "They've already started to bloom, haven't they?" As though he'd walked there that morning. "You sound like my neighbor," I joked. "Maybe I just read too many maps," he said, smiling without quite meeting my eyes. It was that "not quite" that bothered me. Halfway through, he leaned back and said, "You're quieter than you were on the phone." "I guess I'm nervous." "Don't be. I already know you." Something about the phrasing made my stomach tighten. Then my phone buzzed, a notification from a neighborhood watch app. Someone had posted a photo of an unfamiliar car parked on Willow Street, a silver sedan, captioned, "Anyone know whose this is? Been here every night." I laughed awkwardly and turned the phone so he could see. "This looks like your car." He paused. "Could be. They all look alike these days." He smiled again, but the flicker in his eyes gave him away. He knew that car. When we finished our drinks, he offered to walk me home. I declined. "I'm close," I said. "I know," he answered softly, then added, "I mean, you said you live near here, right?" The words landed wrong, heavy. I waited until he turned the corner before I headed the opposite direction. My street was quiet except for the sound of rain tapping gutters. When I reached my building, I saw it. A silver sedan parked under the same cherry tree I'd photographed last spring. On its dashboard lay an open copy of The Secret Garden. My throat went dry. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe I was being dramatic. The next morning, I mentioned it to my downstairs neighbor, Mrs. Ellery, who was watering her plants in her floral robe. "You've had that car outside for weeks," she said. "Belongs to a quiet fellow who lives opposite. Works odd hours." "Does he, drive much?" "Not that I've seen." I nodded, pretending not to feel the chill creeping up my arms. That night I texted David, "Nice meeting you. Maybe next time somewhere new?" The message never delivered. His profile on the forum was gone. Molly called that evening. "So, how was the date?" she asked. "Lovely," I lied. "He gave me a book." "Mom, you hate when people give you books. You like finding them yourself." Maybe I just liked that someone tried. After she hung up, I stared at the book on my kitchen table. On the first page, in neat handwriting, was a line I didn't remember seeing before. "Every garden has its gate. Some just open the wrong way." 2 days later, a small brown parcel arrived. No return address. My name written in looping script. Inside was a stack of Polaroids. They were all photos of Willow Street, my street, from different angles taken during the day. The final photo showed the Lantern Cafe from outside, my empty table, rain streaking the glass. On the back, in careful handwriting, was one line: "Coincidences are just memories waiting for context." My body went cold. I called the police, though part of me knew how that would go. The officer was polite, concerned, and non-committal. "No threats, just photos?" he asked. Maybe a misunderstanding. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching the silver sedan parked under the cherry tree. Once, around 2 a.m., I thought I saw a shadow move behind the wheel. The next day I asked Mrs. Ellery if she'd seen the man again. "He left early this morning," she said, "suitcase in the trunk." For the first time in days, I felt air in my lungs. Maybe he was gone, but when I went to bed that night, the secret garden was missing from my kitchen table. A week passed. I started walking to the sea every morning, forcing myself to breathe the cold air until my thoughts steadied. The police hadn't found anything. The car was gone. Life, they said, was moving on. Then one morning, as I opened my mailbox, I found a postcard inside. No stamp, no postmark, just handwriting I now knew too well. Some stories don't end. They wait. That night, rain returned to Brighton, tracing the same halos around the street lamps as the night we met. I stood by the window, watching the cherry trees sway, and thought about how easily we give away pieces of ourselves to strangers, through words, photos, laughter. How quickly kindness becomes a map. Across the street, a man walked by carrying groceries and an umbrella patterned with books. I couldn't tell if it was him. Maybe it didn't matter. Because sometimes what haunts you isn't the person. It's the idea that someone could know you better than you know yourself. I've always liked the sound of my own breathing through a microphone. Not in a vain way. It's just proof I'm still here, still real. When you record often enough, silence becomes a shape you can measure. Test, test, 1, 2, I whispered into my mic, watching the small green bar flicker on my laptop screen. The hum of my dorm fridge filled the quiet, a kind of mechanical heartbeat. Outside, rain pressed against the window like static. It was late February 2024, Boston's kind of cold, the kind that makes you want to stay inside your head. My podcast, People Who Listen, wasn't famous, just a few thousand streams, mostly students who liked late-night whispers about campus legends, missing persons, ghost stories tangled with fact. I started it after my breakup with Alex, a year ago now, but really, it was an excuse to talk without being interrupted. Recording felt safer than conversation. Listeners could judge, but they couldn't answer back. My parents didn't get it. They wanted me in grad school chasing something stable, but I wanted space. I wanted the kind of quiet that let me hear my own thoughts echo. Then one night, I got a message. It was from a new listener on the show's Instagram. "You have the kind of voice that makes people tell the truth." His name was Eli, a communications major from a nearby university. He said he'd stumbled on my episode about the Hawthorne Tunnel, where a student supposedly disappeared in the 90s. We started chatting, just harmless stuff. Audio editing tips, campus life, books we were pretending to read. His messages were careful, articulate. Then came the calls. Every night for a week we talked while I edited audio. He told me how he struggled with insomnia, how his apartment walls were so thin he could hear his neighbor snoring. I told him how the hum of my fridge felt like company. We laughed about how campus life felt like living in a long hallway with no doors. When he said he wanted to meet, I said yes before I thought too hard about it. The study lounge was a quiet cafe halfway between our schools. Brick walls, Edison bulbs, low chatter. I arrived early, like always. My nerves made me check my mic levels even though I wasn't recording. It's a stupid reflex. Habit makes comfort. At 7:10, Eli texted, "Running a few minutes late. Look for the guy with the gray hoodie." 5 minutes later, a man in a gray hoodie came in, scanned the room, then walked out without ordering. My stomach tightened. Coincidence, I told myself. Then another text. Sorry, still finishing a class presentation. When he finally arrived, different hoodie, but the same smile from our video calls, I exhaled. He was taller than I expected, soft-voiced, with a calmness that felt deliberate, like he was trying not to startle me. I liked the one where you said, "Fear only grows in silence," he said after a few minutes, stirring his coffee. You sounded like you meant it. I did, I said, caught off guard. That episode isn't online anymore. Oh? Maybe I heard it before you deleted it, he said quickly, eyes lowering. I smiled, but something twisted inside me. That episode had only existed for 2 days before I took it down. When I called my brother Ben that night, I told him, "He's nice." You don't sound convinced, Ben said. He quotes things I barely remember saying. That's what the internet does, May. It never forgets. But that night I dreamed of the man in the gray hoodie who had walked out before Eli arrived. In the dream, he turned toward me. The face was Eli's, but not quite. 2 days later, I logged into my podcast dashboard to upload a new episode. Something strange was there, a collaborator name I didn't recognize. Eli H. The system said he had edit access. My stomach dropped. I had never shared that account, not even with Ben. I changed the password, renamed the project, logged out, logged back in. Still there. I told myself it was a glitch, maybe from syncing my old laptop. But the more I thought about it, the more wrong it felt. I searched the student directory for Eli H. at his supposed university. Nothing. I tried the others nearby. Still nothing. I sent him a text. Hey, random question. How do you spell your last name again? No answer. That night I got an email from an unlisted address with an audio file attached. The subject line read, "For your next episode." I shouldn't have opened it, but curiosity is a kind of gravity. I pressed play. First, it was my own voice. Fear only grows in silence. Then another voice, low, calm, and too close to my microphone. And I listened to everything. I ripped off my headphones. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone. That line wasn't from any of my episodes. Ben drove up that weekend, his car full of code-laced advice. Someone could have deep-faked your voice, he said, scrolling through my laptop logs. People clone AI voices all the time now. It's creepy, but not supernatural. Ben, he knew things that weren't online. Then he's someone who knows you offline. That thought scared me more than anything. We checked my devices, no spyware, no hidden mics, no cameras. Ben shrugged. If it makes you feel better, just go analog for a bit. So I did. I bought an old cassette recorder from a thrift shop, the kind with actual buttons and that warm hiss that sounds like safety. When I posted my next episode, I called it The Listener. I recorded it on tape, alone in my room. Not every first date ends badly, I said softly. Some never really end at all, they just fade into background noise. It felt good to take control again, to tell the story my way. But that night, minutes after it went live, I got a notification. One new comment. Great sound quality this time, Maya. The new mic suits you. I froze. I hadn't told anyone I switched to analog. After that, I stopped sleeping properly. Every creak in the apartment sounded like breathing. Every notification buzzed through my bones. Ben kept calling. You need a break from all this, he said. Come stay with Mom for a bit. But I couldn't leave. Part of me needed to know who he was, if he even existed. So I set a trap. I recorded a fake episode, never published it, just saved it on my hard drive under a decoy name. I made sure to mention something personal that no one could know. Sometimes I dream of the ocean, but I've never been. 2 days later, I received another email. Subject: You'd like the water, it's quiet there. That was the moment I realized he wasn't after fame or money, or even me exactly. He wanted proximity, to exist close enough to be heard, but never seen. I deleted everything that night: social media, podcast archives, even the local files. I took a hammer to my laptop. The sound of breaking glass felt final, almost freeing. Now, I record on tape. No uploads, no comments, just me and the static. Sometimes I still hear a faint whisper when I play the tapes back. A voice under mine, breathing in sync. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's interference. Or maybe he really does listen to everything. We live in an age where connection is easy, but safety is fragile. Every word we share online leaves a door open, one that anyone can walk through if they listen long enough. Not everyone who listens deserves your voice. Protect your silence. It's the last thing that still belongs entirely to you.